Are you a business owner stuck in fear, doubt, and worry about what the marketplace will look like in the future? Then this show is for you. Strap on your seatbelt and get ready to disrupt and innovate. Here's your host, Lisa Levy.
Today's guest is a powerhouse entrepreneur and a true innovator at the intersection of AI and podcasting. Deirdre Tshien is the co-founder and CEO of Capsho, the world's first AI-powered podcast copywriter. Deirdre is also the creator of content Honey Traps, author of Honey Trap Marketing, and the host of Grow My Podcast show. She's a serial entrepreneur who has founded and led 7 businesses across 5 industries in the last 9 years. She's navigated the highs, the lows, and the hard-earned lessons that come with launching and scaling companies. And now she's on a mission to help fellow experts beat obscurity, build momentum, and make their voices heard. Deirdre, welcome to the conversation.
Hi, Lisa. I am so pumped to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
I am so excited to have this conversation. In this day and age, podcasting is a powerful medium. And I personally had an experience in the last couple of weeks where I applied to be media at a large AI conference and was granted credentials because podcasts are where people are getting information.
Yes.
So I'm building up to why is what you've built with Capsho so important today?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. When we started, like a lot of other entrepreneurs, we were out to kind of, solve a problem that we had ourselves. Back in 2019, we started a coaching business. 2019, 2020. And that was when I had my first podcast. And, at the time it was all about be everywhere, like the Gary V content domination thing. It's like, you got to be on every platform. And so we were like, trying to figure out this whole go from podcast to, and then repurpose that for literally every platform. And I had myself, my co-founder, and 3 VAs helping. And it got to the point, it was ridiculous because we were trying to be on every platform and it just literally burnt us all out. And I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And I knew about AI because it feels like my very, very old self was back in banking in Australia. I was actually exploring, my role was to explore emerging technologies. So this was 10 years ago, and so I was looking to blockchain and AI. And so I knew about AI, but it was very use case driven, you had to have a specific problem that you were trying to solve for AI to be really effective. It's not kind of the AI that we know today, like ChatGPT, where you can just ask it anything. It was very, very specific. But even when I looked at the problem at the time that I was facing, I was like, I think this is, and knowing about, AI and I was like, this is a really great use case for it. So we actually started building Capsho end of 2021, launched mid 2022. And where that evolved really, to come back to your question is that, for me, the reason it was a very acute problem that I was solving, but what was kind of the underlying thing that I was trying to do was I was trying to amplify my message, right? I was trying to get what it was that I was teaching or what my expert guests were teaching out there in front of more people. It was all about visibility. And so that's really what drives us from a Capsho perspective is how do we help entrepreneurs who we all know have a really important message that they want to share with the world? How do we help them amplify that message and their voice?
And it's really interesting to me because those of us who host podcasts, and whether we do video, audio, whatever, right? The idea that repurposing content has been a cornerstone and a foundational element to amplifying a message. But that's really not what you think is the right way to do it anymore. Can we dig into those, that idea of why repurposing content is a waste of time and really how to promote what you're doing effectively?
Yeah. It's a little bit counterintuitive given that we're actually in this space of repurposing, but I'll put quote unquote repurpose because there's just so many definitions of repurposing when you come down to it. And what I do always rail against somewhat is repurposing from a content vomit perspective. I call it the content vomit because that's what we kind of found when AI, especially, ChatGPT. So early 2023, gosh, like I think we all saw the proliferation of like AI content on the internet, right? It was just like, it was the vomit. And so that stuff just doesn't work. I mean, at the end of the day, our audience are all humans. I mean, let's see whether that stays true, but like for now, right, the audience that we want to get in front of, they're all human, and they can see when you're not being authentic. They can see when you are just trying to create efficiency for efficiency's sake. You're creating content for content's sake. And so I very much took a stand at the time that it's like, don't just repurpose your content almost in a blind way where it's like, put something in and get all this stuff out and post it. I am really, really intentional whenever I talk to anyone who asks me. It's like, be on max 2 platforms, because at the end of the day, like, we still need to do the human lifting of knowing what drives those platforms, knowing how to get our content in front of the right audience, building the right audience, being able to convert that audience into leads, having the right strategy through our content to do that. Like, that stuff is not just, that doesn't come through just repurposing. And it's even down to, we built in marketing strategies into Capsho. So we worked with experts in like the social media space, in the blogging space, in the YouTube space, to actually make Capsho really effective from a results perspective. And there are some things that, like, no matter how good Capsho is, no matter how good AI is, like, we can't write. Like, there's so for example, and I'll try to keep this short, but we worked with Katie Brinkley in the social media space. So she has what she calls a 4-post social media strategy. One of the posts, she calls it a community post, and that is, you cannot repurpose that, because that's all about a story, like a personal story, a personal experience that you have, that you want to share, that's related to the topic that you're bringing your awareness to for your audience. And AI, because AI can't read your mind, unless you go down the Neuralink path, but it can't do that. And so what we do inside of Capsho is we give you some like prompts and stuff, but we cannot write it for you. And so that's why, repurposing for repurposing's sake, I just do not believe in that, because it does come down to what actually works to reach your audience, another human being on the other side of the screen.
And it is so incredibly important to keep that in mind, right? This ultimately is about a connection between one person and another. If that connection isn't authentic, there is no connection if it's not authentic, and
Exactly.
nothing comes from it, right? It's just, you're done, dead air, stop, all stop, hard stop, we're done. So starting with the reality and that understanding that in a community post, that it is a personal experience and something that is real, that is going to connect Lisa to Deirdre, is really important.
100%. Yeah. That's what we kind of like, and no amount of AI can do that.
Yeah, absolutely true. And I'm going to take us on a bit of a sidestep here, but for those of us watching this in video, right, Deirdre, in your space, you have a sloth. It is a stuffed plush toy, but this is our personal connection moment, right? So tell us a little bit about the sloth that is sitting there with you and why it's important to you, why he or she.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Lisa, you picked up, this is Freckle. So we actually, did you get that from our website, by the way? Yeah. Okay. So, by way of background, we actually adopted a sloth, through charity, and her name is Freckle. And the reason why the sloth is like so important to the Capsho brand is because, our whole, apart from helping entrepreneurs with a message amplify their voice, the other aspect that we really, really like is part of our ethos, I guess, our principle is, how do we help people be intelligently lazy? Because that is kind of how we want to work as people inside Capsho. It's like, we don't want to be spending weekends and all day. We know how. I've been in entrepreneurship for more than a decade. I know how much it takes. And, we've gone to the point now, it's like, well, it just doesn't make sense anymore. We have the tools, we have the technology. we have the systems, we have the smarts to be able to operate in an intelligently lazy way. And so the sloth is our reminder to do that. How do we, take a leaf out of the sloth's book and, be able to do things really effectively, high quality, but um, in a way that allows us to actually also explore other interests, things that brings us joy, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to stay creative as humans.
And I love the way that you phrased that, intentionally lazy, right? That is a very impactful statement, because lazy for the sake of lazy drives nothing. But
Mm-hmm.
in my consulting practice, we do a lot of process efficiency work. And one of my favorite things to do is always talk with the person who everybody says, well, they're kind of lazy. They come in late, they leave early, but when you look at results, they're driving really good results. And when that
Yes.
equation happens, to your language, they're being intentionally lazy, right? They're working smarter, not they're working smarter. And I love to understand
Yes.
and how to take that apart and put it back together to replicate it across an entire team.
Mm-hmm.
Because shouldn't we all, right? There's a phrase, slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Mm.
And so I wanted to bring attention to Freckles and what you're doing, and what I thought was the logic behind that, but you shared it in a much more eloquent way than I would have. So as an entrepreneur, Deirdre, you've built, Capsho is your current
Mm-hmm.
project, but you have been an entrepreneur. You are a serial entrepreneur. Can you tell us a story about one of your experiences, right, when things went off the rails and they weren't going well, and what you did, what you learned from it, and how you moved forward?
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So, one of our first, well, it was our first business, which I highly do not recommend being anyone's first business, was actually in hospitality. So my husband and I opened a dessert bar in Sydney, Australia. That's where we grew up. This was back in 2013. We actually grew that brand to 5 locations, and it was in 2018, the end of 2018. In particular, this one location, I'll give you a bit of background. It was when we opened it, it was going gangbusters. It was in the heart of the city. It was a great location. And then suddenly it was like revenues just like dropped and kept dropping and kept dropping. And our store manager would, show us sort of like how quiet the center was and things like that. And we definitely had no reason to doubt him and his word. But at the end of 2018, through a series of events, we actually found out that he had been stealing from us for quite a period of time. It was ended up being in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And, it was like, there's like the human betrayal, because you just don't ever expect that just doesn't cross your mind, as humans who trust other humans and who've worked with these people, and it just doesn't cross your mind. But I think when we look back at that and what it actually drove us to do, because with declining revenues, we had to get way more efficient, we had to get way more innovative around our products, like what we were selling, how we were promoting, all of these things. To obviously, at the time, we just thought it was we were in a downturn of a cycle of business, and so it was a really, really hard time, because it was as a result of something that was really, really negative, really bad. But when you look, we kind of like proud of ourselves for having been able to weather that time and come out almost even stronger, because we had to make it work. So I don't know if that quite fits the bill for you, Lisa, but I think that was a very, very huge learning experience, that no matter how tough things seem at the time, like, as long as, and entrepreneurship is all about problem solving, right? Like, as long as you focus on the problems that you're trying to solve and you do it in a way that feels good and authentic to you, like, you can only win.
And it's a hard story, right? That trust and the betrayal is one of those types of stories that can be so devastating to a business, but also to the business owner and the people who are the ones who have been betrayed. the reality that you were problem solving through something you didn't understand and did not know, that money was leaving through the back door, as the phrase
Yeah.
goes, that you were innovating the products, the services, and still managing to try and make that business function in spite of the fact that you
Mhm.
had a bad actor who was deliberately trying to tank you, is a really great story about some self reliance and resilience, and
Mhm.
the fact that you and your husband together were creating the innovation to survive. So I
Yeah.
commend you for sharing that story, because it definitely is a hard one, and a very painful personal lesson. With that, and trust is such a human thing. When trust is broken, has it changed how you approach teams and in new businesses? Did it make that a little harder going forward?
Um, yes and no. Like it did take. There was a period of time where it was just like, it got to the point where I was like, are other people are like, do we have other team members who are, in on this, who are doing like, and so there was a period of time where we were kind of having to go through this. We didn't want to show that we were distrusting of everyone, but it was like there was also, we kind of just had to watch our backs a little bit. But what I think definitely in terms of like now, if you fast forward to the types of businesses that we've kind of opened and run since then, we've deliberately kept it very lean, and it's not so much because of maybe that of what happened. It was
Mhm.
just because like I think a lean business, when you can run it efficiently with less resources, that's always going to be better. Like even from a capacity, your own capacity perspective as well, than having a big like a lot of staff, and you're kind of having to bring in managers to manage them, and that was kind of, it was getting out of hand from that perspective. So probably for us, the learning was more broadly, more generally about how do we build businesses that are deliberately can be run by deliberately small teams. Um, Not so much because of that, but kind of as
But
well.
kind of. And so
Yeah.
really, I think what I hear you describing is that, and it is sort of that worst case example, because we want to make the assumption that people are inherently there to add value, to contribute, to do work, that they aren't there to undermine and destroy, right? We just,
Mm-hmm.
if we work from that negative assumptions mindset, oh my gosh, that's kind of where you've got the individual, you have their lead, you have their supervisor, you have their manager, and it really, you now have
Mm-hmm.
10 people watching an individual do their job, and that just sucks profit out of business, and it makes people not
100%.
want to show up and do work. So you've created, and calling it lean, or is also a high performing team. You've brought
Mm.
together and you've learned how to bring the people who want to commit and get things done and are capable, and because of their capability, they have earned trust to do their jobs.
Yes.
And that is a huge step forward in the ability to scale, because to your point, if you're adding resources, it's because you have the need for more capacity, not because people aren't getting the job done. You're responding to positive indicators, not negative.
Yes.
That's awesome.
100%. Thank you. Thanks. You articulated that so well.
That's absolutely positively fabulous. And so, as you're growing and maturing, and Capsho is obviously not new, right? It is a maturing and
Mm-hmm.
evolving platform. When you look to the future, what are you looking at, 18 months from now, 36 months from now? What's the future hold?
Oh gosh. I mean, I can't even tell what it's going to look like in 2 hours time. Things change so quickly. But I like honestly, I just want to keep serving the people that we do. I just want to keep helping them get results, and I just want to keep enjoying what we do, and having fun. Like that's kind of ultimately like the goal. In terms of tangibly, like what we're good. I can't actually answer that, Lisa. I mean, I wish I could. I was never one of those like 5-year planners and stuff, because I cannot look out that far. Business changes so much that it's like it would be impossible. Anything that I say now, I'm like, I know it's going to be completely different to what it's going to be at that time.
And I love that answer because one, I think it's incredibly honest, and it is, and especially right now with the inflection point with AI. 6 months from now, 8 months from now, 10 months
So
or
different.
10 years from
Yeah.
now, I can't even begin to conceive of what it might actually look like. So knowing that you come from a banking background where you had to do a lot of future casting, it was part of your job, I'm sure. I really
Yeah.
appreciate that today you can say, I really just don't know.
Yeah, I'm throwing up my hands, and I'm just going to put my faith in the universe
And enjoy the ride.
Exactly.
Enjoy the ride. Absolutely fabulous. Deirdre, if the things that we're talking about today have piqued the curiosity, if members of the audience are hosting their own podcasts, where do they learn more?
Yes, thank you, Lisa. Well, if you are an entrepreneur or content creator who you have a podcast, maybe you have a YouTube video channel, you do even training videos, webinars, even if you guest on other podcasts, I would love for you to try out Capsho to see how it can, quote unquote, repurpose your content, but with marketing strategies that work, that are designed to get you results. You can sign up for a 7-day free trial at capsho.com. That's capsho.com. And when you do, please put the code disrupt in. So DISRUPT, the disrupt code, because if you decide to stay on and be a Capshovian for longer than the 7-day free trial, then that code will get you 50% off the plan for as long as you're with us. So that's our gift to you as being part of Lisa's audience.
Deirdre, that is an incredibly generous gift. Thank you so much. I will make sure that the links are in the show notes, that the promo code DISRUPT is clearly there, so it's easy for people to sign up if they are interested. And I have very, very much enjoyed our conversation today, because as much as all of us who are creating content, and let's just be honest, every entrepreneur and business owner and working human being today is creating content in some way, shape, or form. Hopefully we're doing it with, for the betterment of the world around us. But with the platform with Capsho, you've shared with us that it is an intentional way to repurpose our content, looking for specific results and outcomes with a marketing strategy behind it. This is a no content vomit environment. We are not just sending things out everywhere. Other piece of wonderful and actionable advice is really we need to nurture 2 platforms. There's absolutely no reason that we need to try and be the best of everything and be everywhere all the time. There aren't enough hours in the day, and there's not enough energy in our teams, because it's more than an individual. So this approach allows us to work towards something that I'm going to use as a banner idea going forward, is being intentionally lazy. The grind is hard, and if we're working smarter, not harder, it's always, always a better outcome for what we're doing. So Deirdre, thank you so much for being here with me on the show today. This was a fabulous conversation that every member of the audience should be able to action a piece of advice that you've given and shared. And thank you for sharing some personal stories. Audience members, you know my rules. Don't get left behind. Join me next time.
That's it for today's episode of Disrupt and Innovate. Head over to iTunes and subscribe to the show.